The transport ship shook as it dropped out of hyperspace. Nari pressed her face against the small window and saw her destination for the first time. Nexus Prime hung in the darkness like a metal moon. The planet was covered in training facilities and military bases. This was where the galaxy sent its strongest warriors to learn how to fight. Nari felt her stomach twist with fear. She was 19 years old and barely tall enough to reach most aliens at chest level. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore the standard gray jumpsuit that all new trainees received. In her small bag, she carried only basic clothes and her grandfather's old military dog tags. The other passengers on the transport ship were not human. A massive creature with thick red skin sat across from her. It had 4 arms and looked like it could crush a car with its bare hands. Next to it sat something that looked like a walking crystal formation. Blue light pulsed. Inside its clear body, near the back of the ship, a creature covered in black scales sharpened its claws on the metal wall. None of them looked at Nari. To them, she was invisible. Just another weak species trying to play soldier. The ship landed with a heavy thump. The transport doors opened and hot air rushed in. Nexus Prime smelled like metal and burning fuel. The gravity was heavier than Earth's gravity. Each step felt like walking through thick mud. A voice boomed across the landing pad. New arrivals. Form a line. Move quickly or you will be left behind. Nari grabbed her bag and hurried to join the other new trainees. There were about 30 of them from different species. She was the only human. The creature giving orders was tall and thin with green skin. It had 6 eyes that moved independently of each other. 2 eyes watched the new arrivals while the other 4 scanned the area for threats. "I'm Instructor Kelm," the creature said. "For the next 6 months, your life belongs to me. Some of you will become warriors. Most of you will wash out and return home in shame. A few of you will die." The instructor's 6 eyes focused on different trainees as it spoke. When 2 of the eyes looked at Nari, she felt like they were looking right through her. The Galactic Training Academy has simple rules, Instructor Kelm continued. "Survive the training or leave. There is no middle ground. Follow me." They walked through the main gate of the academy. The buildings were made of dark metal and rose high into the sky. Everywhere Nari looked, she saw older trainees running, fighting, or carrying heavy equipment. Most of them were twice her size. The instructor led them to a large building in the center of the complex. Inside was a huge room filled with bunks, stacked 3 high. Each bunk had a small storage area and nothing else. "Find an empty bunk," Instructor Kelm ordered. "You have 10 minutes to settle in. Then we begin orientation." Nari found a bottom bunk in a corner. As she unpacked her few belongings, a shadow fell over her. She looked up to see the red-skinned creature from the transport ship. Up close, it was even more frightening. Its forearms were covered in thick muscles, its teeth were sharp and yellow. "I am Thex," it said in broken galactic standard. The language was hard for most species to speak perfectly. "You are the human." "Yes," Nari replied. "I'm Nari." Thex laughed. It was not a friendly sound. "Little soft skin," he said. "You will not last 1 day here. Humans are weak. Your bones break too easily. Your skin tears like paper. Why did they even let you come here?" Other trainees had gathered around to listen. They all stared at Nari like she was some kind of strange animal. She felt her face turn red with embarrassment. "Earth was recently accepted into the Galactic Council," Nari said quietly. "We have the right to send trainees here too." "Rights," Thex snorted. "Rights do not matter in combat. Only strength matters. You have no strength." A loud whistle echoed through the barracks. "Orientation begins now," Instructor Kelm called out. "Anyone who is late will run punishment laps until they collapse." The trainees hurried to the main assembly hall. It was a vast room with seats arranged in circles around a central stage. Nari found a seat in the back, trying to stay invisible. Commander Vortan walked onto the stage. He was the most frightening creature Nari had ever seen. His skin was covered in dark green scales. His eyes glowed red in his reptilian face. When he spoke, his voice made the walls vibrate. "Welcome to Hell," Commander Vortan said. That is what you will call this place for the next 6 months. This academy trains the elite warriors of the Galactic Defense Force. We do not accept weakness. We do not accept failure. We do not accept excuses. The commander walked to the edge of the stage. His red eyes scanned the crowd of new trainees. 60% of you will not complete this program, he continued. Some will quit when the training becomes too difficult. Others will suffer injuries that end their military careers. A few will die in the simulation chambers or on the practice battlefields. Nari felt her mouth go dry. She had known the training would be dangerous, but hearing it said so directly made it real. The training simulations use environments from the galaxy's most dangerous worlds, Commander Vortan explained. You will fight on planets with acid rain that can melt flesh from bones. You will survive in gravity fields that can crush your organs. You will hunt and be hunted by creatures that see you as food. The commander paused and looked directly at Nari. She felt like those red eyes could see into her soul. Some species are naturally stronger than others, he said. Some are faster. Some are smarter. But strength alone does not make a warrior. The greatest warriors are those who can adapt. Those who can overcome their natural limitations through training and determination. After orientation, the trainees were given their first meal. The food was gray and tasted like metal, but Nari was too hungry to complain. She sat alone at a small table while the other species formed groups with their own kind. Thex sat with other large, strong-looking creatures. They kept looking over at Nari and laughing. She could guess what they were talking about. That night, as she lay in her narrow bunk, Nari pulled out the photo of her family. Her parents and younger brother Kim Juno smiled back at her from the image. They looked so small and fragile compared to the creatures around her. Juno had been excited when she left for the academy. My sister is going to be a space warrior, he had told his friends. He had no idea that his sister was now surrounded by beings who could kill her without even trying hard. Above her, Thex settled into his bunk. The metal frame creaked under his weight. Sweet dreams, soft skin, he whispered in the darkness. Tomorrow your real education begins. Nari closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new humiliations, but she was here for a reason. Earth needed warriors who could stand with the other species of the galaxy. Someone had to prove that humans belonged here. Even if that someone was just a small, scared girl who felt very far from home. 3 weeks had passed since Nari arrived at the academy. Every day brought new pain and humiliation. During combat training, the instructors always paired her against opponents who were much bigger and stronger. They seemed to enjoy watching her struggle. In the morning, she would face Corvan warriors with claws like knives. In the afternoon, she fought against Thraxian dancers who moved faster than her eyes could follow. By evening, she was covered in bruises and barely able to stand. The medical bay had become her second home. The healing machines could fix her broken bones and torn muscles, but they could not repair her damaged pride. Every night she fell asleep wondering if she should just give up and go home. But then something changed. 2 more humans arrived at the academy. The first was Park Hyun. He was built like a mountain with broad shoulders and thick arms. His face was calm and peaceful, but his hands looked like they could crush stone. Unlike Nari, who barely passed the physical tests, Hyun excelled at almost everything. He could lift weights that made the instructors nod with approval. He could run for hours without getting tired. But Hyun had one weakness. He was slow. Not just physically slow, but mentally slow to react. In combat, he would think too long before making a move. By the time he decided what to do, his opponent had already won. The second human was Choi Minho. He was thin and quick with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. His reflexes were excellent, and he could dodge attacks that would have flattened Nari. But Minho thought too much. He would analyze every situation until he talked himself out of taking action. The 3 humans naturally found each other. In a place where everyone else saw them as weak and useless, they became a small family. The instructors are testing us, Hyun explained one evening as they sat in the medical bay. Nari was getting treatment for a dislocated shoulder. Minho was having his ribs checked after a particularly brutal sparring session. Testing us for what? Nari asked. The medical robot finished with her shoulder and moved on to scanning Minho. They want to see how humans break, Hyun said. Every species breaks differently. Corvins get angry and lose control. Thraxians become depressed and stop fighting. Zelophites just shut down completely. Minho winced as the medical robot pressed on his ribs. Maybe we're just not meant for this, he said. Look at us. We're always in here getting fixed up while the other species barely get scratched. Speak for yourself, Nari said. I've been watching the other species fight. Yes, they're stronger than us, yes, they're faster, but they're also predictable. She sat up on the medical table and looked at her fellow humans. A Corvin will always charge straight ahead. They never change their attack pattern. A Thraxian will always dance around their opponent, looking for the perfect moment to strike. They follow the same moves their species has used for thousands of years. Hyun raised an eyebrow. And humans? Humans adapt, Nari said. We change our tactics in the middle of a fight. We can be aggressive one moment and defensive the next. We think while we're fighting, not just before. That night, the three humans made a secret agreement. They would train together during their free time. While the other species slept or socialized, the humans would study combat footage and practice new techniques. They found an empty cargo bay in the lower levels of the academy. The room was dark and quiet, perfect for secret training sessions. They would sneak down there after lights out and work on their fighting skills. Hyun taught them about strength and endurance. He showed them how to use leverage to overcome bigger opponents, how to turn an enemy's size against them. Minho taught them about timing and strategy. He had memorized the fighting styles of every species at the academy. He knew their strengths and weaknesses, their favorite moves and common mistakes. Nari taught them about adaptation, how to change fighting styles in the middle of combat, how to read an opponent's body language and predict their next move. Slowly, their skills began to improve. Nari still lost most of her fights, but now she lasted longer. She could dodge attacks that would have hit her before. She could counterattack when her opponents made mistakes. Hyun learned to think faster. He began making decisions without overanalyzing every option. His natural strength became more effective when combined with quick reflexes. Minho learned to trust his instincts. Instead of thinking through every possible outcome, he started acting on his first impulse. His speed and reflexes made him harder to hit. But their improvement did not go unnoticed. The academy had a social hierarchy among the trainees. At the top were 7 elite students called the Apex 7. They were the best fighters from 7 different species. They wore special red badges on their uniforms and got better food in the dining hall. The leader of the Apex 7 was Korthak, a massive Corvin whose father commanded an entire battle fleet. He stood nearly 3 meters tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. His second in command was Scylla, a Thraxian whose forearms could move so fast they became a blur. The other 5 included Zephon, a Zelophyte whose crystal skin could deflect energy weapons. There was Mordak from the Vex Collective, whose acidic blood could melt through metal. Zania represented the Skyborn, floating creatures who could manipulate gravity around their bodies. The Apex 7 had noticed that the humans were getting better. This made them angry. In their minds, humans were supposed to be the weakest species. They were supposed to fail and go home in shame. During mealtimes, the Apex 7 would block the humans from getting food. They would stand in front of the serving line and refuse to move until the humans gave up and walked away hungry. During group exercises, they made sure the humans were always assigned the most dangerous tasks. If there was a practice mission on a planet with poisonous air, the humans would be sent without proper breathing equipment. If there was a combat simulation with live ammunition, the humans would be given faulty weapons. The instructors either did not notice or did not care. They seemed to think that this treatment would toughen the humans up or drive them away. Either outcome was acceptable to them, but the harassment was getting worse. What started as simple bullying was becoming dangerous. The Apex 7 were no longer content to just embarrass the humans. They wanted to hurt them. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. Hyun was in the equipment storage room, returning practice weapons after a training session. The room was small and cramped, filled with shelves of combat gear. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Nari was walking back from the library when she heard sounds of fighting from the storage room. She ran toward the noise and found the door locked from the inside. Through the small window, she could see Hyun surrounded by all 7 members of the Apex 7. It was not a fair fight. It was not even a fight at all. It was a beating. Hyun tried to defend himself, but he was outnumbered and caught by surprise. Korthak held him while the others took turns hitting him. Scylla used her forearms to strike his ribs and stomach. Zephon's crystal fists cut deep gashes in his face. By the time they were finished, Hyun was unconscious on the floor. His left arm was bent at an impossible angle. Blood pooled beneath his head. The Apex 7 left through a back exit, laughing among themselves. They did not even bother to check if Hyun was still alive. Nari broke down the door and found her friend barely breathing. She carried him to the medical bay, her small frame struggling under his weight. The medical robots worked on Hyun for 3 hours. They had to rebuild his broken arm with metal supports. They gave him synthetic blood to replace what he had lost. When he finally woke up, his face was swollen beyond recognition. They said it was a message. Jan whispered through split lips, "For all humans. They want us to know our place." Nari sat beside his bed holding his good hand. Inside her chest, she felt something burning. It was not just anger. It was rage. Pure, cold rage that made her hands shake and her vision turn red. She was tired of being pushed around, tired of being treated like she did not belong, but most of all, she was tired of watching her friends suffer. That night, she made a decision that would change everything. The Galactic Training Academy had rules that everyone understood, but no one spoke about openly. These rules were not written in any manual or taught in any class. They were simply part of life at the academy. The most important rule was simple. The strong dominated the weak. At the very top of the academy's social order were the Apex 7. They had earned their positions through combat excellence and political connections. Most of them came from powerful military families. Their species had been part of the Galactic Council for hundreds or thousands of years. Korthak's father commanded the 3rd battle fleet of the Corvan Empire. His family had produced generals for 20 generations. When Korthak spoke, other Corvan trainees listened with respect and fear. Scylla came from the Thraxian Dance Academy, the most prestigious military school in Thraxian space. Her 4 arms had been trained since childhood to move in perfect harmony. She could perform combat, dances that took most Thraxians decades to master. Zephon was different from the others. His species, the Zelophites, did not believe in family names or inherited positions, but he had earned his place through pure skill. His crystal body could withstand energy blasts that would vaporize other beings. In hand-to-hand combat, his fists could shatter metal. The other members of the Apex 7 were equally impressive. Each represented the best of their species. Each wore their red badge like a crown. Below the Apex 7 were the regular trainees. They were divided into unofficial groups based on their species and combat abilities. The Corvans stuck together, as did the Thraxians and the other established military races. At the very bottom were the humans. Nari had learned to read the Academy's social signals. When she walked into the dining hall, conversations would stop. Other trainees would look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. Some would whisper to their friends about the soft skin experiment. The instructors treated humans differently too. They gave them harder assignments and more dangerous training exercises. When a human succeeded, it was treated as a surprise. When they failed, it was treated as inevitable. Commander Vortan made his opinion clear during a combat theory class. "Some species are born warriors," he said, his red eyes scanning the room. "They have evolved for millions of years to fight and survive. Other species are born for different purposes. They become merchants or scientists or farmers." His gaze stopped on Nari. "There is no shame in knowing your limitations. A farmer who tries to be a warrior will only get himself and his comrades killed." After Hyun's beating, things got worse for all the humans. The Apex 7 had sent their message and other trainees had received it clearly. Humans were targets. They could be attacked without consequence. Minho was accidentally hit with a training weapon during a sword practice session. The instructor ruled it a training accident. even though everyone had seen the Thraxian trainee aim directly at Minho's head. Nari found her equipment sabotaged before a wilderness survival exercise. Her water purifier had been damaged, and her emergency beacon had been disabled. She spent 3 days on a desert planet with no clean water before the instructors finally found her. The message was clear: humans did not belong at the academy. They should give up and go home before something really bad happened to them. But the harassment had an unexpected effect. Instead of breaking the humans' spirits, it made them stronger. They began training even harder during their secret sessions. They studied their enemies with the intensity of scholars preparing for the most important exam of their lives. "Look at this," Minho said one night in their hidden training room. He had brought a portable computer loaded with combat footage from the Academy's archives. "Watch how Korthak moves when he fights." The screen showed Korthak in various combat situations. He was undeniably powerful, but there were patterns in his movements. He always favored his right side. He always charged straight ahead. He never changed his tactics once he had committed to an attack. "He's strong, but he's predictable," Nari observed. "What about Scylla?" Minho switched to footage of the four-armed Thraxian. Scylla was much faster than Korthak, but she also had patterns. She always began with the same dance sequence. She always attacked from the same angles. "They all have patterns," Jan said. His arm was still in a healing cast, but he was determined to continue training. "They've been taught the same moves since they were children. They can't think outside. They're training." Nari felt a spark of hope. "But we can?" "What do you mean?" "Humans don't have traditional fighting styles," she explained. "We learn from everyone. We mix techniques from different sources. We adapt and change based on what works." They spent hours analyzing footage of all the Apex 7. Each member had incredible natural abilities, but they also had weaknesses that came from their rigid training methods. Zephin's crystal body was nearly indestructible, but crystals could be shattered if hit at exactly the right angle with exactly the right amount of force. Mordak's acidic blood was dangerous, but it also made him overconfident. He relied too much on his natural weapons and neglected basic combat skills. The more they studied, the more Nari realized something important. The Apex 7 were not unbeatable. They were just unchallenged. No one had ever seriously tried to defeat them because no one believed it was possible. But Nari was beginning to believe it might be possible. Not through strength or speed, but through intelligence and adaptability. The idea grew in her mind like a seed taking root. It was crazy, it was dangerous. It was probably suicide. But it was also the only way to prove that humans belonged at the academy. During mealtimes, she watched the Apex 7 at their special table. They ate better food than everyone else and joked with each other like old friends. They seemed untouchable, like gods among mortals. Korthak caught her staring and walked over to her table. "Something wrong, soft skin?" he asked in a voice loud, enough for everyone to hear. "No," Nari replied quietly. "Nothing's wrong." "Good, because I would hate for you to get the wrong idea about your place here." He leaned down so his face was close to hers. "You humans are an experiment, a failed experiment. Soon the instructors will realize their mistake and send you home where you belong." Other trainees were watching the confrontation with interest. Some looked sympathetic, but most seemed entertained by the humans' humiliation. "Maybe," Nari said. "Or maybe you're wrong." Korthak's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Nari stood up from her table. Even standing, she barely reached Korthak's chest, but she looked up at him without fear. "I said maybe you're wrong. Maybe humans are stronger than you think." The dining hall had gone completely quiet. Everyone was watching to see what would happen next. Korthak laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Stronger? You think you're stronger than me, little soft skin?" "Not stronger," Nari replied. "Better." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Korthak's face turned darker shades of red. His claws extended slightly from his fingertips. "Careful, human," he said in a low, dangerous voice. "You're walking on thin ice." "I'm not walking on anything," Nari replied. I'm standing on solid ground. She picked up her food tray and walked away, leaving Korthak standing alone in the middle of the dining hall. As she left, she could hear whispers starting behind her. Word of the confrontation would spread through the academy within hours. That night, Minho and Hyun found her in the training room, hitting a punching bag with steady, methodical strikes. "Are you insane?" Minho asked. "Do you want them to kill you?" "They're going to try anyway," Nari replied without stopping her punches. "The question is whether I'm going to go down fighting or just let them walk all over me." "There has to be a better way," Hyun said, "something that doesn't involve direct confrontation." Nari stopped punching and turned to face her friends. What if there was a way to face all of them at once, in fair combat with rules and witnesses? "That's impossible," Minho said. "No one can fight 7 opponents and win." "Maybe no one has tried the right way," Nari replied. She walked to the computer and pulled up the Academy's rule database. After searching for several minutes, she found what she was looking for. "The Trial of 7, she read aloud. "An ancient combat tradition allowing any trainee to challenge multiple opponents simultaneously. Last successfully completed 53 years ago by graduate Vextar of the Rimworld Alliance." Hyun and Minho stared at the screen in silence. "You want to challenge the Apex 7 to a trial of 7? Minho finally asked. "Yes." "That's not brave," Hyun said. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Nari agreed. "But it's also the only way to prove that humans belong here. If I win, they'll have to respect us. If I lose, if you lose, you'll be dead." Minho finished. Nari looked at her 2 friends. They had come so far together. They had endured humiliation and pain, but they had never given up. Now it was time to take the next step. "Then I better not lose," she said. The Trial of 7 was buried deep in the Academy's ancient traditions. Most trainees had never heard of it. Most instructors had forgotten it existed. But the rules were clear and legally binding. Any trainee could invoke the trial at any time. They would face 7 opponents in single combat, one after another with no rest between fights. Victory came through submission or unconsciousness. Death was also an acceptable outcome. No weapons were allowed, no technological enhancements, no outside assistance. Just one fighter against 7 others, relying on skill, strength, and determination. The trial had been created thousands of years ago when the Academy first opened. Back then, different species were more hostile to each other. Young warriors would use the trial to settle disputes that could not be resolved through normal channels. Over the centuries, the trial had been invoked less and less. The galaxy had become more civilized. Species learned to work together instead of fighting each other. The last successful trial had been completed 53 years ago, and even that was considered a miracle. Nari spent 3 days researching every detail of the trial. She read historical accounts and studied ancient combat footage. She learned about the legal requirements and the ceremonial traditions that surrounded the event. Most importantly, she learned about failure rates. In the past 200 years, 37 trainees had invoked the Trial of 7. 36 had failed. Most suffered serious injuries that ended their military careers. 4 had died. The odds were not encouraging, but Nari had made her decision. Trainee. Thursday morning, she requested a formal meeting with Commander Vortan. The commander's office was located in the highest tower of the Academy complex. The walls were covered with weapons from 100 different worlds. Battle flags hung from the ceiling like colorful ghosts. Commander Vortan sat behind a desk made from the hull of a destroyed warship. His reptilian features showed no emotion as Nari entered the room. "Trainee Lee Nari reporting as requested, sir," she said, using the formal military greeting. "I hear you had an interesting conversation with Trainee Korthak yesterday," the commander said without looking up from his paperwork. "Something about humans being better than Corvins." "Not better than all Corvins, sir. Just better than some Corvins." Commander Vortan's red eyes finally looked at her. "Explain." "I believe that humans have been underestimated, sir. We may not be the strongest or fastest species, but we have other advantages that have not been properly tested." "Such as?" "Adaptability, sir." Creative thinking. The ability to change tactics during combat. The commander leaned back in his chair. And how do you propose to demonstrate these advantages? Nari took a deep breath. I formally invoke the trial of 7, sir. The room went completely silent. Commander Vortan stared at her for a long moment without speaking. Do you understand what you are asking for, trainee? Yes, sir. I wish to face 7 opponents in single combat according to the ancient traditions of the Academy. And your chosen opponents? The Apex 7, sir. Commander Vortan stood up from his desk. He was even more frightening when standing, his scales catching the light from the windows. The Apex 7 are not ordinary trainees, he said slowly. They are the elite combat students of this academy. Each one could defeat multiple regular opponents without difficulty. I understand, sir. You are asking to face opponents who outweigh you by hundreds of pounds, who have natural weapons that can cut through metal, who have been trained in combat since birth. Yes, sir. This is not merely suicide, trainee. This is elaborate suicide with an audience. Nari stood at attention and looked directly into the commander's glowing eyes. I am prepared to accept the consequences of my challenge, sir. Commander. Vortan walked around his desk and stopped in front of her. Up close, she could see the scars that covered his scales. This was not a being who had learned about combat from books. He had survived real battles against real enemies. Why? He asked simply. Because someone has to prove that humans belong here, sir. If I succeed, it will show that strength is not the only path to victory. If I fail, at least I will fail while fighting for something I believe in. The commander studied her face for several minutes. Finally, he returned to his desk and pulled out an official form. Very well, he said. Tomorrow at dawn, Training Arena Alpha. Standard trial of 7 rules. No weapons, no augmentations, no outside assistance. Victory by submission or incapacitation. He signed the form with a pen that looked tiny in his massive claws. The trial will be broadcast throughout the academy. All trainees and instructors are required to attend. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet, trainee. I may have just signed your death warrant. Word of the challenge spread through the academy, faster than a virus. By dinner time, every trainee knew about the trial of 7. By evening, the betting pools had been established. The odds were heavily against Nari. Most bets placed the chances of her victory at less than 1%. Some instructors were taking bets on how long she would last rather than whether she would win. The Apex 7 themselves seemed more amused than concerned. They sat at their usual table in the dining hall, joking about the upcoming trial. I call. First combat, Korthak announced loud enough for everyone to hear. This will be over quickly. Save some for the rest of us, Scylla replied with a laugh. I want to show off my new dance sequence. Only Zephon seemed to take the challenge seriously. The crystal being sat quietly at the end of the table, his blue inner light pulsing slowly. When the others made jokes, he did not laugh. Minho found Nari in the observation deck after dinner. She was staring out at the stars, thinking about home. Earth was somewhere out there in the darkness, impossibly far away. You know this is crazy, right? Minho said as he sat down beside her. Yes. You know you're probably going to lose. Yes. You know they might kill you, even if they don't mean to. Yes. Minho was quiet for a moment. Then why are you doing this? Nari touched her grandfather's dog tags through her shirt. My grandfather fought in the Terran Defense War, humans against humans before we knew about the galaxy. He used to tell me stories about impossible battles where the smaller force defeated the larger one. How? By refusing to fight the enemies. Battle. By finding a different way to win. Hyun joined them on the observation deck. His arm was still healing, but he looked better than he had since the beating. I've been thinking about what you said, he told Nari. About adaptation and creative thinking. I think you might actually have a chance. Really? The Apex 7 have never faced an opponent like you. They're used to fighting other members of their own species, or similar species. They know what to expect. But you're different. Minho nodded, slowly. They'll try to fight you the same way they fight everyone else, but you don't have to fight back the same way. Exactly, Hyun agreed. You can change your style for each opponent. Be aggressive against defensive fighters. Be defensive against aggressive fighters. Keep them guessing. The three friends sat in comfortable silence watching the stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow would bring either triumph or disaster. But tonight, they were together. Whatever happens tomorrow, Nari said quietly, I want you both to know that meeting you here was the best thing about this place. You made me feel like I wasn't alone. You're not alone, Hyun replied. Humans stick together. Always, Minho added. As the night grew later, other trainees began gathering on the observation deck. Word had spread that the human challenger was there, and they were curious to see her before the trial. Some came to mock her. Others came to wish her luck. A few seemed genuinely impressed by her courage even if they thought she was doomed to fail. But the most surprising visitor was Zephan, the crystal being approached slowly, his inner light pulsing in a pattern that indicated peaceful intentions. The other trainees moved away, giving him space. I wish to speak with you, he said to Nari. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They walked to a quiet corner of the deck, away from the crowd. Zephan's transparent face was difficult to read, but his body language seemed almost respectful. You have issued an honorable challenge, he said. I wanted you to know that I will fight you with full effort tomorrow. I will not hold back because you are small or because your species is new to the galaxy. I wouldn't want you to, Nari replied. Good, but I also want you to know that I respect your courage. It takes great strength to face impossible odds. Thank you. Zephan was quiet for a moment, his inner light flickering. My species has an old saying, the strongest crystal is not the one that never breaks, but the one that reforms itself after breaking. What does that mean? It means that true strength comes from the ability to change and grow. Your species may be weak in body, but you are strong in spirit. That strength should not be underestimated. With that, the crystal being walked away, leaving Nari to think about his words. As dawn approached, the observation deck gradually emptied. The other trainees went to get what sleep they could before the morning's events. Soon, only Nari, Minho, and Hyun remained. I should try to sleep, Nari said, though she knew sleep would not come easily. We'll be there tomorrow, Minho promised. In the front row, cheering you on. Win or lose, you're going to make history, Hyun added. The first human to invoke the trial of 7. Dawn came too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Nari had barely slept, but the night felt like it lasted forever. When the morning alarm sounded, she was already awake, staring at the ceiling of her bunk. Training Arena Alpha was the largest combat facility at the academy. It could hold over 1,000 spectators in its circular seating arrangement. The fighting floor was made of reinforced metal that could withstand energy weapons and explosive impacts. Energy barriers surrounded the combat area to protect the audience from stray attacks. By the time Nari arrived, every seat was filled. Trainees from all species had come to watch the trial of 7. Even the instructors were there, sitting in a special section near the arena floor. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Most of the crowd expected to see a quick and brutal defeat. They had come to witness history, but not the kind of history Nari hoped to make. Commander Vortan stood at the center of the arena floor. His voice boomed through the speakers as he explained the rules to the audience. The trial of 7 is an ancient tradition of this academy, he announced. The challenger will face 7 opponents in single combat. Each fight continues until one combatant submits or is rendered unconscious. No weapons, no augmentations, no outside assistance. He paused and looked directly at Nari, who was waiting in the challenger's entrance tunnel. The challenger may rest for 30 seconds between opponents. Medical assistance will be provided only if the challenger is unconscious or requests surrender. Any violation of these rules will result in immediate disqualification. The Apex 7 entered from the opposite tunnel. They walked together in perfect formation, their red badges gleaming under the arena lights. The crowd cheered loudly as they took their positions along the edge of the fighting circle. Korthak stepped forward first, his massive frame casting a long shadow on the metal floor. He was over 3 meters tall and weighed at least 4 times as much as Nari. His claws reflected the light like polished knives. Nari entered the arena alone. She looked impossibly small compared to her opponents. Her standard training uniform seemed plain next to the elaborate combat gear worn by the Apex 7. But something was different about her demeanor. The nervous, constantly struggling trainee was gone. In her place stood someone who had made peace with what was about to happen. She walked to the center of the arena with steady steps. Her breathing was calm and controlled. Her eyes were focused and alert. The crowd gradually fell silent as they realized the trial was about to begin. Standard trial of 7 rules apply, Commander Vortan announced. Combat begins when I give the signal. First opponent, take your position. Korthak stepped into the combat circle, confidence radiating from every movement. He had never lost a fight at the academy. He had never even been seriously challenged. This would be another easy victory to add to his record. Ready, challenger? Nari nodded. Ready, opponent? Korthak flexed his claws and grinned, showing his sharp teeth. Begin. What happened next would be analyzed and discussed for years to come. Combat instructors would study the footage frame by frame. Tactical experts would write papers about the techniques used. But in the moment, everything happened so fast that most spectators could barely follow the action. Korthak charged forward, with a roar, expecting to end the fight with a single devastating blow. He had used this tactic hundreds of times against hundreds of opponents. It had never failed, but Nari was not where he expected her to be. Instead of backing away or trying to block his attack, she stepped forward and to the side at the last possible second. As Korthak's massive form thundered past her, she struck him precisely at the base of his neck, targeting a nerve cluster she had memorized from studying Corvan anatomy. Korthak's legs collapsed beneath him. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he crashed to the arena floor like a falling tree. The crowd gasped in stunned silence. Time elapsed. 1.2 seconds. Before Korthak's body had fully hit the ground, Scylla was already in motion. The 4-armed Thraxian leaped into the combat circle with fluid grace, her limbs moving in the complex patterns of her species' ancient war dance. Her forearms created a blur of motion as she launched a coordinated attack that should have been impossible to defend against. Each arm struck from a different angle at precisely timed intervals. No opponent had ever survived the opening sequence of this particular dance. But Nari did not try to block or dodge all 4 attacks. Instead, she dropped to the ground and swept Scylla's legs out from under her. The Thraxian's perfect dance became an uncontrolled tumble that sent her crashing into the arena wall. Scylla tried to get back up, but her head injury from hitting the wall had left her disoriented. She wobbled for a moment, then collapsed. Time elapsed. 2.8 seconds. Zephon stepped into the circle before the medical teams could even check on Scylla. The crystalline warrior moved with purpose, his blue inner light pulsing brighter with each step. His transparent body gleamed like a living diamond. He had watched Nari's first 2 victories with growing respect. This was not luck or accident. The human had studied her opponents and found their weaknesses. She deserved his full attention. Zephon's crystal fists were nearly indestructible. His body could withstand energy blasts that would vaporize most organic beings. He had never met an opponent whose attacks could even scratch his surface. But Nari had been studying Zelophytes for weeks. She knew that crystals, no matter how strong, had natural fracture points where different segments connected. As Zephon approached, Nari grabbed a handful of the special sand that covered parts of the arena floor. The sand was designed to provide traction during combat, but it served another purpose now. She threw the sand directly at Zephon's optical sensors, temporarily blinding him. While he was trying to clear his vision, she struck his left knee joint with precise force and perfect timing. The blow hit exactly where 2 crystal segments met. Zephon's leg cracked along its natural fault line. He stumbled and fell, his massive, crystal body unable to support its own weight on a damaged joint. Time elapsed. 4.1 seconds. The crowd was no longer silent. Shocked gasps and amazed whispers filled the arena. What they were witnessing was supposed to be impossible. Mordak of the Yuskum Vex Collective entered the circle next, his acidic blood already beginning to seep from his pores. His species' natural defense mechanism made his skin dangerous to touch. One drop of his blood could burn through metal, but acid was useless if it could not reach its target. Nari stayed far away from Mordak, forcing him to chase her around the combat circle. His heavy body was not built for speed. As he grew tired from the pursuit, his movements became sloppy and predictable. When Mordak finally committed to a lunging attack, Nari was ready. She used his own momentum against him, redirecting his charge into the arena wall. The impact stunned him long enough for her to apply a sleeper hold that cut off blood flow to his brain. Mordak went limp in her arms. Time elapsed. 5.7 seconds. Zanya, of the Skyborn, floated into the combat area, her body naturally defying gravity. Her species could manipulate gravitational fields around their bodies, making them incredibly difficult to hit or grapple. But Nari had noticed something during her studies. Skyborn warriors relied too heavily on their flight ability. They rarely practiced ground fighting because they rarely touched the ground. When Zanya dove toward her from above, Nari did something unexpected. Instead of trying to dodge or strike back, she grabbed onto Zanya's legs and used her own weight to drag the floating warrior down to the arena floor. Once on the ground, Zanya's gravitational powers were useless. She had never learned how to fight in close quarters. Nari pinned her with a simple wrestling hold and applied pressure to a nerve point until Zanya tapped out in submission. Time elapsed. 7.3 seconds. The sixth opponent was Torvik, a member of the Bone Crusher clan whose skeleton was made of living metal. His punches could dent armor plating, and his metallic bones made him incredibly difficult to hurt. But metal conducted electricity, and the arena floor had built-in training systems that could generate electrical fields for combat simulations. Nari activated one of the floor panels as Torvik stepped on it. The electrical current traveled through his metallic skeleton, causing his muscles to seize up. He collapsed, temporarily paralyzed by his own enhanced physiology. Time elapsed. 8.6 seconds. The final opponent was Raxtor, a shape-shifting being whose body could change form at will. He was considered the most dangerous member of the Apex. 7 because his abilities made him unpredictable, but unpredictability worked both ways. As Raxtor began to shift his form into something more combat-ready, Nari struck him while he was mid-transformation. Shapeshifters were vulnerable during the changing process, their bodies temporarily unstable. Her strike disrupted his transformation, leaving him stuck in an awkward half-changed state. Unable to complete his shift or return to his original form, Raxtor was effectively helpless. Nari applied a simple pressure hold that forced him to submit. Final time elapsed. 9.7 seconds. The arena fell into complete silence. 7 members of the Apex. 7 lay unconscious or defeated on the metal floor, and in the center of it all stood Lee Nari, barely breathing hard, completely uninjured. For several long moments, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody seemed able to process what they had just witnessed. The days following the trial of 7 were unlike anything Nari had experienced since arriving at the academy. For the first time in months, she walked through the corridors without feeling the weight of hostile stares. Instead, trainees from various species nodded respectfully when they passed her. The dining hall, which had once been a place of humiliation and exclusion, became somewhere entirely different. Other species approached her table, asking questions about human fighting techniques and tactical thinking. Some wanted to know about Earth and human culture. Others simply wanted to understand how she had defeated 7 elite opponents in less than 10 seconds. The secret, Nari explained to a group of curious Thraxian trainees, is not trying to be stronger than your opponent. It's about being smarter and more adaptable. She demonstrated some basic human martial arts techniques that emphasized using an opponent's strength and momentum against them. The Thraxians, who had always relied on their natural speed and agility, found these concepts fascinating. Park Hyon had become something of a celebrity himself. Once his arm healed completely, Other trainees began seeking him out for strength training advice. They discovered that his calm, methodical approach to physical conditioning could benefit any species. Humans think differently about exercise, Hyon explained to a mixed group of trainees in the academy gym. We don't just train our natural abilities. We work to overcome our natural limitations. He showed them exercises designed to improve weaknesses rather than enhance existing strengths. Slow species learned techniques to improve their speed. Fast species learned methods to build endurance. Strong species learned precision and control. Choi Minho found himself in demand as a tactical analyst. His ability to study combat footage and identify patterns had impressed the instructors. They began asking him to help analyze training scenarios and develop new teaching methods. The key is not just watching what works, Minho told a group of junior instructors. You have to understand why it works and under what conditions it might fail. His detailed breakdowns of the Apex 7's fighting styles had become required reading for advanced combat courses. The instructors realized that his analytical approach could benefit all trainees, not just humans. But the most significant changes were happening at the command level. Commander Vortan called Nari to his office 1 week after the trial. The intimidating, reptilian being seemed different somehow. His usual stern demeanor had been replaced by something that might have been respect. "Sit down, trainee," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "We need to discuss your future." "My future?" "Sir?" "The Galactic Defense Force has been monitoring your progress since the trial. They are very interested in your tactical abilities and your species' potential." Commander Vortan activated a holographic display that showed star maps and military deployment charts. "The Defense Force is offering you early graduation and immediate placement in their Strategic Operations Division." Nari stared at the display in amazement. The Strategic Operations Division was the elite planning unit of the galactic military. Only the most brilliant tactical minds were accepted into their ranks. "What about Hyun and Minho?" she asked. "They have received similar offers. Hyun is being recruited by the Physical Training Command. They want him to develop new conditioning programs for mixed species units. Minho is wanted by the Intelligence Analysis Corps." The commander leaned back in his chair. "It seems the galaxy has developed a new appreciation for human capabilities. Because of one fight, because of what that fight represented," Commander Vortan replied. "You proved that intelligence and adaptability can overcome seemingly impossible odds. That is exactly the kind of thinking the Defense Force needs." Nari looked out the window at the academy complex below. Trainees from dozens of species were conducting exercises and training drills. For the first time since arriving, she felt like she truly belonged among them. "There's something else," the commander continued. "The academy wants to establish a new program based on your success. We're calling it the Adaptive Combat Training Initiative. It will teach all species to think beyond their natural advantages and learn from other fighting styles. You want me to help design it? I want you to lead it. After you complete your service with strategic operations, of course." The offer was overwhelming. A few weeks ago, she had been the Academy's unofficial punching bag. Now she was being offered positions that most trainees could only dream about. But more importantly, she was being offered the chance to change how the galaxy thought about combat and cooperation. That evening, she met with Hyun and Minho in their old secret training room. It felt strange to be there now that they no longer needed to hide. "Strategic operations," Minho said with a grin. "Do you realize what this means? You'll be planning military campaigns for the entire Defense Force, and you'll be analyzing intelligence for the Corps," Nari replied. "That's just as important." Hyun flexed his newly healed arm. "Physical Training Command wants me to revolutionize how different species train together. Apparently, they think human methods might work for everyone." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, thinking about how far they had come. "Do you remember what Thex said on our first day?" Hyun asked. "That we wouldn't last one day here? He was wrong about a lot of things," Nari replied. "But I don't blame him. His species had no reason to respect humans. We hadn't proven ourselves yet. And now? Now they know that humans are not the weakest species in the galaxy. We might just be one of the most dangerous." The next morning brought news that surprised even Nari. Korthak, the former leader of the Apex 7, requested a meeting with her. They met in one of the Academy's quiet gardens, away from the crowds and noise of the training facilities. The massive Corvin looked different than he had during their previous encounters. His aggressive posture had been replaced by something that might have been humility. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "I treated you and your species with disrespect based on ignorance and prejudice." "Thank you," Nari replied. "But you don't need to apologize. You were working with the information you had. That is no excuse for cruelty," Korthak said. "I have spoken with my father about the events here. He wishes to extend a formal invitation for human officers to train with the Corvin 3rd Battle Fleet. The invitation was unprecedented. The Corvin military had never opened their training programs to other species. Your victory has caused many to reconsider their assumptions about humans," Korthak continued. "We are beginning to understand that your species brings valuable perspectives to military thinking." Similar invitations began arriving from other species. The Thraxian Dance Academy wanted to study human adaptability techniques. The Zelophyte Crystal Guard requested human tactical advisors. Even the secretive Vex Collective expressed interest in cultural exchange programs. Word of the trial and its aftermath had spread throughout the galaxy. Earth's status within the Galactic Council was quietly elevated. Human colonies that had struggled for recognition found themselves welcomed into trade partnerships and defense agreements. On her final day at the Academy, Nari stood on the observation deck where she had spent so many lonely evenings. But this time she was not alone. Trainees from various species had come to say goodbye and wish her well in her new assignment. Thex, her former bunkmate, approached with something that might have been embarrassment on his alien features. "I was wrong about humans," he said in his broken galactic standard. "You are not soft-skinned weaklings. You are, what is the word, formidable." "We're all formidable in our own ways," Nari replied. "The trick is learning to work together instead of against each other." As her transport ship prepared for departure, Nari took one last look at the Academy. This place had nearly broken her spirit, but it had also made her stronger than she ever thought possible. Her grandfather's dog tags felt warm against her chest. The old soldier would have been proud to know that his granddaughter had not only survived the galaxy's toughest military training, but had changed how an entire civilization thought about strength and warfare. The transport ship lifted off, carrying Nari toward her new assignment with strategic operations. But more importantly, it was carrying the knowledge that humans had finally found their place among the stars. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the most technologically advanced. But they possessed something that many other species had forgotten in their pursuit of natural advantages: the ability to learn, adapt, and overcome any challenge through intelligence and determination. As Earth fell away below her, Nari smiled. Her younger brother Juno would be excited to learn that his sister had become exactly what he had always believed she could be: a space warrior worthy of the title. But perhaps more importantly, she had proven that humans deserved their place in the galactic community. Not as the weak newcomers who needed protection, but as equals who brought their own unique strengths to the table. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders and dangers that humanity had yet to encounter. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them with the knowledge that they belonged among the stars. And that knowledge, Nari realized, was worth more than any victory in combat. The future was bright with possibilities, and humans would help write the next chapter of Galak.